Hello, and welcome to this Publishers panel, which is hosted by the British Centre for Literary Translation as part of their Italian Advanced Translation Workshop programme. It's supported by the University of East Anglia, the National Centre for Writing, Arts Council England, and the Italian Cultural Institute in London. And we thank all of them for making this possible and enabling us to join the translation workshops this week. I'm joined for this panel by Aina Marti-Balcells of Héloïse Press, Richard Village of Foundry Editions, and Kate Harvey of Akoya. Three, I would say new, relatively new, if it's all right to say that about Héloïse still, relatively new small publishing houses focused on publishing translations. So I have a lot of questions for them, and I hope that you do too. If you like, please feel free to use the chat function to sort of talk amongst yourselves. If you have questions for the panelists, which we will get to in the last 15-20 minutes of the session, please can you put questions in the Q&A box where I can see them, because I'm not very good at reading and listening at the same time. So please keep it as focused as possible. I'd like to start by asking you all to sort of introduce yourselves. Actually, hi, I'm Ruth Clarke. I'm a translator from Italian, French and Spanish. I translate and edit, and I've worked with a couple of these people. And should have introduced myself first before asking you guys to please introduce yourselves and your publishing houses. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and what your kind of publishing focus is? And whoever would like to start can start.
Hi,
I'm happy to start. You go, Aina.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's the first time where Héloïse Press is not the newest press in a panel. The time flies by, it's incredible. Yeah, so my name is Aina. I set up Héloïse Press in 2021 with the first 4 books coming out in 22. And since then, we've been publishing 4 books every year. And so the press focuses on literary fiction written by women, mostly in translation, but also in English. Next year, we're going to have a couple of English written texts, for example. And where else? I think, well, what I do mainly is basically supervise everything from manuscript to book, to publishing the actual book, to the press, and then having it in bookshops, etc., marketing. I do commission the text because it's just me in the press, but then I work with a lot of freelancers, translators, obviously, and also editors, etc., etc.
Thank you. Kate, go ahead.
Thank you for having me. Akoya is a brand new publisher. We're publishing our first 2 books this autumn. We were set up in 2024 by Camilla Hagen, who is Norwegian and an avid reader. And in our early list, we have a very exciting emphasis, I think, on the Nordic languages as a result. There are 4 of us in the editorial team. Camilla is acquiring, as am I, and we have 2 excellent assistant editors, one of who focuses on poetry. So we're publishing primarily in translation from all around the world, literary non-fiction, literary fiction, and poetry. Our non-fiction tends to have a memoir or travel emphasis. And the focus of the list really is on storytelling that invites strong emotion. We're very excited about what we're up to. My languages are Italian and French. So between us, we cover maybe half a dozen, all the Nordic languages, plus Italian and French. My journey into publishing was also a kind of serendipitous route via Italy, in which I went on a postgrad cultural exchange program to the University of Pavia and had a great time, but got to know some Italian writers, and with them attended the book fair in Torino. And though I hadn't necessarily seen myself becoming a publisher, I found myself back in London with some contacts and with some Italian, and I got very fortunate in finding a literary agency who needed an Italian speaker in the foreign rights department. And that was where it all began. I moved from there to editorial. I've worked at a couple of corporates and I'm now really enjoying the adventure of being at a brand new independent.
Great. It's a very exciting time to get involved. Yeah. And Richard, tell us about Foundry.
Good luck, Kate. That's
Thank you.
Say. Good luck, Kate. I'm Richard. I'm from Foundry. I started Foundry, I think, is it 2 years ago? 23? I can't really remember. Yeah, 2 years ago, just something years ago. It's frankly my midlife crisis. I know I've said this many times before, but it is. So I went back to dear UEA to do the Masters in Literary Translation, and my path diverged into the mad world of publishing. And Foundry was set up, and our focus, we have a very clear geographic focus. We're about publishing works in translation from the Mediterranean basin. So to date, that means we've published works from French, Spanish, Italian, Greek, Arabic, and Catalan. We have very exciting edition of Maltese next year, which I'm completely thrilled about. And permanently on the lookout for the elusive book in Turkish that I'd like to publish. Our focus is also literary fiction. I suppose what I normally say is that it should reflect a sense of the people and their beliefs and thoughts and ideas and preoccupations from the Mediterranean today. So it's contemporary literary fiction that is relatively localized. So that's what we do.
Excellent. Aina, you said you publish 4 books a year at the moment.
Correct.
Richard, how many is Foundry?
We've done 6 this year and we're aiming for 6 next year.
Okay. And what's Akoya's number of?
We have 15 next year.
15. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Couple of poetry, majority fiction, and the rest are non-fiction.
Great.
2 of them are Italian. I'm happy to talk about them later.
Yes, we will talk about some examples of books and how that's worked out. So what I want to start with is the very beginning, how you acquire a book. Where does it come from? Do you find it? Are you reading? Are you doing things because you all speak other languages? Are you doing your own reading? Are you relying on agents or foreign publishers to come to you? Is it all big glamorous deals at book fairs? Is it translator pitches? How does it start?
I think it's a really healthy mixture of all of those things. It's a real ecosystem for me finding a book. I do love a book fair, not for the glamorous deals actually, but because I find that enthusiasm and tips from other publishers working in the same area in different countries can be fantastically helpful as a source of information. Obviously, agents and rights directors are very important. And then I also, I think in terms of our list, that the translators are effectively co-curators of the list. Because, between us, we speak half a dozen languages, but we aspire to publish in so many more than that. And so, a submission from an agent, which has a really excellent translation sample attached, is a very persuasive thing if you can't read the language in question. And I also love a personal pitch from a translator. If there's somebody I've worked with before and we have that kind of trust relationship and they come to me and they say, this is a really, really excellent book, will you take a look? That's also very compelling.
I agree wholeheartedly with Kate. I think it is an ecosystem. I agree so I do a lot of reading. I speak French, Spanish, and Italian, so I do a lot of reading. So sort of one bit of our editorial area is entirely covered and another bit is veiled in mystery because Greek I don't speak at all, and actually finding amazing books in Greek, of which there are, I'm sure, many, is quite complicated. So yeah, it depends on all those things. We've built up incredibly good relationships with rights holders, with editors, foreign rights people, agents in Italy particularly. We have a very strong relationship with Italy, which is marvelous, and kind of it's slightly unfair because it's sort of my natural predisposition. but also in Spain, France as well. And we're doing what we can to build in the other territories. I agree very much with Kate that a compelling presentation from a translator that one knows and that one has a relationship with is a really, really cool thing. And I also agree wholeheartedly that so if it's in a language that, you know, I have no idea about, then a really brilliant sample attached is, I mean, it sways it, right? One way or the other.
So for me, mainly pitches come from agents and translators. I need to say that I loved Kate's expression of translators being co-creators of the list. I never thought about it. It's beautiful. I need to say that all the pen awards we have come from translators' pitches, and a prize that will be soon announced was also pitched by the translator who is in the shortlist now. So I'm really happy. I mean, I think it's quite well known that Héloïse Press is open to translators' pitches. Now I have a lot more of pitches or submissions from agents and other publishing houses abroad, from the rights team, etc. When I started, I used to read more and find the books more myself, but now I suppose I received so many submissions that I stopped doing that. And I received very good ones, and 4 books a year is really small number. So
Yeah.
I do have quite a waiting list already, and a lot of books that I will need to sacrifice. So I don't escort myself anymore, I'm afraid. But yes, I suppose. Yes, it's agents and translators, I would say. I also like very much working with emerging translators, and I have very good experience about this. I have worked with 2 new translators, well, both of them completing their first book-length translation. What else? And then agencies, I have my favorite agents. I don't know what Kate and Richard think about them, are curious species, I think. So yes, I have my favorite agencies, and I rely a lot on their suggestions, and I usually listen more to them than when it's random. Just today, for example, I received a pitch by an agent, and the pitch was like by a male author, and it's clearly they haven't checked the website probably, so I won't even answer that
Nothing more
email.
annoying.
Yes.
Aina, did they start the email? I think this book would be perfect for your list.
More or less. Yeah.
That's just a caveat. That's really, really annoying. It's like if you pitch me a Latvian book and say it's perfect for my list, that's a real giveaway.
Yes.
So yeah, if we're going to pitch to you, understand what it is that you publish. I think that's quite a good basic starting point for everyone. Is there anything particular about Italy, because this is part of the Italian focus? Is there anything particular about Italy, the way that agents work there? I know it's slightly different. Well, it's slightly different in each country, the way that agents operate. Is there anything particularly good or bad that you find is different with acquiring an Italian book?
I haven't found any difference.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I only have 2 Italian authors, but one actually also won an award and pitched by the translator Anna Stransky. So because it was a book originally published in 1991. So the rights were with the author, and Anna made the whole thing happen basically. So there wasn't any agent or publishing house involved in that one. And then with Eric Camus, who is my other author, instead, she doesn't have a literary agent. The agent is the agent that represents the Italian publishing house where she's published.
Yeah.
And that was actually my first acquisition. And with that agent, it's very, nice because when I got in touch with her, I actually asked for another couple of books to read. I read Italian, so I could do that myself. And when we had a meeting, of course, she wanted to check who I was, and I didn't even have a website yet, etc. And then when I explained the press, she said, "Okay, I'm going to send what you asked, but I'm going to also send you something else." And that was Erica Mu's book. And I went for this one in the end because she really spotted it and understood what LA's press is. And yeah, it's one of the first agents, actually the first agent I have talked to, and we still keep kind of, I don't know, familiar relationship. Maybe that's the word. Yeah, so that's my only experience commissioning from an agent in Italy. I have talked to other agents in Italy asking for books I was interested in, and it seems, yeah, very similar to other countries.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that influences your choice, like prizes? If it's not just coming from recommendations, are you looking at sales figures? Are you looking at prize nominations or prize wins? Does that sway you one way or another?
I mean, a little bit, but one realizes that, I mean, a little bit in terms of the fact that it will mean something in the domestic market. It is incredibly difficult to make any of that translate to anything in the UK. So there's absolutely no parallel with somebody who's won the Strega and sold 80,000 copies. I mean, this year, the one argues the book in translation of the year, which is, Perfection, very, very medium seller in Italy. Everybody in Italy is just like, we have no idea how this has happened. An absolute runaway success here. So that kind of market parallel is always incredibly difficult to make, I think. And the more that we get into this, the more that kind of that analogous patterns, it's really hard to draw analogous patterns.
And I completely agree with you, Richard. I had that experience with in the inverse, and the first year I published an author, it was really big in France, etc., etc. It didn't work at all.
Yeah.
And I have our best sales are not actually particularly big in their home countries in terms of prices, for example. So I kind of now completely ignore the price thing.
Yeah.
I still try, it happens, I still try to make marketing and things like this, but I'm not sure if I know in Spain, the Spanish public responds to certain prices, for example, the Goncourt prize in France. But I doubt it happens here, to be honest. So yeah, it's very different.
I think, well, it was announced this morning, so I think we should just ask anecdotally, who knows who won the Prix Goncourt? And see if anybody knows the answer to who won the Prix Goncourt, who isn't a literary translator from French. I think it's a real case in point.
Kate, you were going to say something.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add, and it's really just a kind of PS, is that it's domestic sales figures and a prize win, I think, have a certain value anecdotally, which is to say that when the book is starting its journey into the market, and you've got to start to craft the story that your reps are going to tell to their customers and so on. And that long process of Chinese whispers begins, which starts with the publisher and ends with the reader. It's not unhelpful if you can say this book won the Strega or this book has sold 300,000 copies in Italy. I experienced that somewhat actually with Paolo Cognetti, who I published in my last job at Vintage. He was huge in Italy. And though the sales here haven't replicated the 300,000 figure, he's well stocked all over Waterstones. You see him on tables. There was a film of Great Mountains also. And, he came into the market with a sense of, I don't want to use the word grandeur, but the sense that, this was a writer of significance who was arriving into English. It's interesting that you mentioned Latronico, Richard, because I read, I'm sure you all did, there was a good interview with him in The Guardian recently in which he described the phenomenon in which being published by Fitzcarraldo in English and with such a degree of success have become a gateway to publication into many, many languages, which hadn't necessarily
Absolutely.
taken the book when it first came out in Italian. And I
Absolutely.
thought that was a very nice thing to hear about the work that translation publishers are doing in the UK market. And
But I
the
think,
success of
I
that
think,
book's been very exciting.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. I
Sure.
think we're all contributing to that, though. I mean, obviously Fitzcarraldo has been going much longer than the three of us have been going. But I think, the ability for people to say, yeah, here's a book. Actually, somebody in the Anglosphere has decided that this book should go into the Anglosphere is a great impetus for sales in other territories.
Mm-hmm. And it arguably opens the book up for a more easy read, actually,
Absolutely.
for editors considering from other publishers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and actually, we're asked to help with that quite often. I will have, particularly in Italy, because I have quite a close relationship with the rights holders there and with the authors. They're like, oh, look, somebody in Greece is sniffing around. Could you write a nice email? And it's always, actually, I think it's always really nice to be. It's really great to be able to help support the journey of something that you believe very implicitly in further.
Yes. So Kate, you were talking about I love that phrase, the Chinese whispers process of how it goes from the very beginning to the actual reader. If like Aina, you're doing everything, you don't have a marketing department to convince, you don't have
we have a marketing director, but fortunately she's very aligned with the mission.
I really don't have a marketing department either, by the
way. So do you think does that make it easier or does that make it just more pressure if you're making the decisions? Or Kate, how do you navigate that?
We work very collectively, actually. We don't all work part-time, but we are a team of 8. So we have some very lively discussions. And I joined recently. So when the original team were making acquisitions in the early days, I mean, we have 15 books coming out next year. So there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes since 2024.
Sure.
And there was a real consensus around decision making in that early stage, and now the list is starting to grow. Obviously, there are more of us, and I think we're moving to a very exciting point at which we're having, very rigorous and lively discussions. I mean, 15 books is more than 4 or 6, but it's still a very selective process given the volume of things that are coming in and the decisions that we have to make. So everybody reads. We meet every Wednesday. We talk about what we're going to take forward. Sometimes we get further reads. And, we're at the happy stage now where the list is populated enough that we're making decisions. Obviously, the quality of the book comes first and foremost. It needs to speak to you. You need to know the story you're going to tell about it. You need to know the kind of people you think are going to read it. But we're now thinking also about not just list alignment, but how our new acquisitions are going to complement the existing body of authors that we've published already. And has progressed the list further. So yes, everything is done in discussion, and the team is very much aligned in our mission. And I think the thing I mentioned earlier about needing to have a strong emotional connection with the work is one of the things that helps us to decide what we're going to take forward. You can tell in a room with 8 people talking about a book, if everybody's lit up, that there's something special there. And you have to have that kind of joy and enthusiasm and conviction at the beginning, because this is the start of a relationship that's going to last a very long time, and you need to have the conviction to talk about this book many, many, many times for a number of years. So the list, as a result, has come about quite organically. It's very much built on passion and the desire that we have to share these books with the world. But I think that gives our core list certainly real integrity, and so far people seem very happy to join us.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. I think having like-minded people in a room, and that's the thing that you're looking for. That's the X factor that you can't explain really when you're pitching on your own. It's like it's just that good. And if you have everyone in the room, like if you're on a judging panel as well, like everyone feels the thing, that's what's going to take it forward. So Aina, how do you navigate that if all those decisions are on you?
Yeah, so marketing was probably, well, not probably, it was the weakest of my points when I started the press. And I've learned a lot. I think that's the department where I kind of learned the most. So everything that Kate says, yes, yes to that. But I have recently, or yes, the second half of the press, I would say, of the life of the press, added a more marketing mindset in the sense that all the books I publish, I love them. However, because I can do this because there's a lot amongst I can choose. Now, when I go for a book, so when I read the book, I love it, but I need to see a concept as well to kind of organize a whole marketed package there, including the cover, for example. So I'm more commercially minded in that regard. It does not affect the quality. We still have, I mean, I still do literary fiction, and as I say, I need to still love the book. But if I have two choices in front of me and I need to choose one because I cannot do 5 books a year, I will go for the one where I can envisage a whole marketing campaign. And that worked very well with Cesaria. For example, I think it's yes, I would say the most successful marketing campaign. And it was because of that. It was that reason. So I'm trying to replicate this now when I commission, not with authors that I already have and I keep publishing. I won't kind of looked at that because I just like to prioritize them. But when it's about a new author, I need to see a more kind of a, yes, sellable concept. And my experience is that the press likes this in terms, I'm in the media, when you land reviews, etc. That happened again with Cesaria. And I think my sales rep like that as well. And that means that booksellers probably stock more copies, or more booksellers will stock copies of the book. So I have gone through a change here in the way I commission books. So I think, yeah, I do it more organically rather than saying, okay, I love this one, I'm going to go for this one, and then we'll see about the campaign. Now, more or less, I need to have an idea at the beginning.
So
Yeah,
it factors in even if you don't have a whole.
I think when I'm reading, you have to, in my head, it's like I have, and this sounds a sort of slightly grandiose way of saying what everybody else said, but I think it's incredibly important to see a life for the book in English, if that makes sense. So you read some books which you absolutely adore, and you're like, but I can't imagine standing there in Mr. B's in Bath going, yeah, your readers are going to love this because X, Y, and Z. And you have to be able to envisage that. You really have to be able to go, this, I can stand in front of any bookseller and I can flog this because I know that their readers are going to love it. And I don't know what the criteria are, so don't ask me what the criteria are. But do you know what I mean? You get a sense of how this book could actually in some way start to speak to people when it has a life in English.
Yeah, I think you have to be able to envisage who's reading it and where it's going to go and what it's going to look like. Even I don't mean in terms of cover design, but maybe. And
I mean, ours all look the same, so you know.
Well,
so
there's
we
that.
get the easy way out there.
If you have a series design, that's covered. And Aina, you have a designer that does all of your covers.
She does all of them. Yeah.
Kate, have you got in-house designers? How are you working with?
We have a really
others?
brilliant designer called Holly Titchener, who yes, we have a template for our fiction which allows for different treatments of color inside it. So the typography is more or less set, and then we can play. And the idea there is that the colours evoke the tone of the book or give you some idea of, what you're going to expect when you open that first page. And then our non-fiction has a more photographic treatment.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
then, we extend that look and that branding across the whole list because, I think there are two ways of doing it. I think if you're a small press, you're either looking at a kind of very successful precedent book and you're finding a way visually to evoke the idea of that in the consumer's mind, or perhaps you're doing it with a copy or something, the comp title. Or, and I think this is what we're doing, and obviously many small presses do the same thing, you find a kind of design that will allow people to follow the list, the press, to build that trust relationship in that community, so that if somebody sees an Akoya book and they enjoyed it, they might think, well, I'll try another one. So yes, we're working on a very strong visual identity with that in mind.
Yeah, I think it's helpful.
It works. It works.
Yeah.
Because, now if we have two on a table, the chances are a lot of punters will buy two. So, there was a lot of groveling and a lot of begging, but it's just like, please just put two on, because actually those kind of covers that sort of feel like they might, they are very much part of an aesthetic. People might just buy both, and it works more often than you think.
Really?
Yeah.
It's also a lot of fun not to chase the market.
Oh God. Well, also, I think it's also about, it's incredibly hard work creating an author brand for somebody who isn't here and potentially doesn't speak our language. So in the absence of being able to do that, what one has to do is do, as you say, Kate, and create the community around the press. So it's sort of playing to that as well, I think.
Chasing the market was actually the next thing I wanted to ask you about, so thank you for that. I wanted to ask about trends, because particularly with Italian, we have Ferrante fever that took over for a while there. And how do you respond? I mean, as a small press, do you have that same sort of market pressure? Are people asking you to be publishing the next Ferrante or the next whatever it is? Or are you just able to say, like, choose to do that or choose to resist that? How does it work with a bit more independence?
I don't feel that pressure. I know that's a very simple question. You mean from the readers?
From anywhere, really, but I guess, yeah, like, do you feel like either that's what readers want, or there's an assumption that that's what they will want? Like, if they've read one Japanese cat book, they're going to read 7 more Japanese cat books, so why don't we publish some more Japanese cat books?
Yeah,
Are you tempted to publish a Japanese cat book is not really the question, but
I think when you know what your press is, that's it, really. I don't really care about.
yeah, you've got your own trend in a way. You don't need.
And I suppose the way to go here is that, well, as Richard and Kay were saying, building this trust. So, yeah, I hope what we publish, it's our readers are happy with it, and new readers come because of it. And yeah, I think that's it.
I think I've definitely had the experience of looking at other breakout successes and thinking, wow, I would love one of those. Natalia Ginsburg is a good example. I mean, the work that Dawn's did with her, such a great writer. So of course we can all aspire to find, a gem like that with a long history of publications. But I think, I mean, I would love to hear counter examples, but I struggle to think of a clear success in the region of this is the next X. I think it's always a slightly disappointing proposition or experience. And I think, we're all in this business of looking for and publishing translated literature because we're excited by taking risks, by formal daring, by different ways of telling a story. And so I think maybe constitutionally we're not necessarily inclined to be looking for the next thing, but rather to be creating the new thing.
Yeah, I was going to echo that completely and say, actually, I very deliberately don't want anything that involves anything from Naples involving teenage girls. And it's like and there's a lot. I mean, a lot comes across our paths, right? That is that. And I think in Italian, which is the language I publish most it from, I guess, I think we've taken a very deliberate decision to bring stuff that wouldn't normally get here. I mean, certainly, say next year we're doing 2 Italian books. They're both satires, and one's a political satire and one's a social satire, which is absolutely not where Italian works in fiction have been for a long time. So yeah, we like finding new things and different things and bringing a different take from these places and a different take on stories from these places, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the advantage of having that independence. You can sort of reject trends and find the new exciting things that you want to do. We've got this far without actually really talking about translators, which is my fault. But once you've found those books, how do you then match a project up with a translator? Is it the translator who brought it to you if it's a pitch, or is it will you work with someone because you've worked with them before? How do you choose a translator? Do you do sample, like get 3 different samples? How do you match a translator to a project?
I've had experience of doing all 3 of those things. And it's maybe not a helpful answer, but it's a real book by book basis. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in at the same time as you.
No, we keep doing this all the time, don't worry.
Sorry, I should address the question to one person, probably. That would help. Sorry, that's bad sharing. Aina, carry on.
Yeah, so if it's a pitch from a translator, then that translator would do the translation. Authors always have the same translator, for example. And then if it's something, so for example, let's say an agent sends it to me, and sometimes I go with the sample, the translator who's done the sample, sometimes I don't. But when I don't, I ask the agent how involved that translator was, like, if it was like a passionate thing and they would be devastated if they don't do translate. I like to respect that. Yes, that's it.
I
Okay.
think I'm probably a bit awful, and I've got translators who I think are brilliant and who I really like working with. And I tend to be less squeamish. I mean, I have to say, I've taken on 2 projects where I'm like, if the translator comes with it, I'm not making the acquisition. So I'm afraid I'm just a bit. I'm not very nice, I don't think. But it's got to be really, really, really bloody good. And also, we're tiny, and I do most of the editing. And so if that process becomes elongated because the translation isn't necessarily up to the scratch that it should be, that adds layers and layers of complication into. So the thing about publishing is that if you're tiny, it's all about plate spinning, and everything it's all about these plates all moving kind of at a certain time, so that from buying it to when the book hits the shelves, you have to try and make this process where you're juggling so many things. You have to try and make it as smooth as possible. And something becoming, if you have a sense that something's going to be sticky, there just isn't time in that process to allow for stickiness. So I'm afraid I'm kind of, there's somebody's asked a question, I see. It's like, what red flags do you look out for? That's a massive red flag I look out for. It's like, is this because of either your work or who you are going to make this sticky? Sorry to sound nasty, but one has to be kind of honest about these things.
Sure. Kate, do you have translators that come pre-attached to pitches, or people? I mean, I guess with a brand new press, you don't have those existing relationships unless you've brought them from previous
Yeah, I have some
work.
from my previous work, and as does Camilla, but we're stringent. I mean, we have recently commissioned a translator who provided a sample for a Danish piece of nonfiction because it was absolutely brilliant. And it was her rendition of this author's voice that made us really fall for the project, which is, that's a surprising one for a small press to be taking on at this stage. But equally, if we were to proceed with something and the sample attached wasn't up to scratch, then we would send it out for 2 or 3 other reads. And so we try to respond to what's in front of us and act accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel, Ruth, about, do you write samples regularly? Or do you have enough work that you don't need to do that now?
Well, the question of samples is a bit of a tricky question as a translator, because
Yeah.
if you're asked to do a sample, then you would like to be paid for it.
Yes.
And so if you're doing that, usually if you're doing a sample for an agent, it would be
Yeah.
paid. But if you're doing a sample for a publisher, it might not be. They might
We
ask you
would
to
pay
do
for
that
samples.
for free. They shouldn't, yes, and thank you. It should be paid. It should be paid
Yes.
work. Because the publisher is going to use that for part of their business. So they need to pay for what you provide them, I think. But that means that sometimes the samples that I do will be for an agent, and the agent will send those out, do whatever they do their job with it. But then I have no idea who's read it, like
Yeah.
whether anyone's reacting to it, whether they, will do what Richard's doing and go, I really like this book, but I want someone else to do the translation. So yes, I do a lot of samples, but they don't necessarily connect in my experience unless they're directly commissioned. And sometimes it's a case of, we'd like you to do the book, but can you do a sample first so that we can see what your rendition of the voice is? And then in that case, that's much more straightforward, because it's kind of just do an audition for a job that you can then do the whole job. So again, case by case situation from the translator side as well with samples, I think.
We're doing a fun thing at the moment where we're really bringing the translator into the promotion of the book. We started a series on our socials called In Translation, and we're editing video that comes out with the launch of the book, hosted by Insta, in which the author and the translator read side by side. And it's very nice to be able to kind of experience that process live. Both as someone who's edited the books in question, but also someone who has no familiarity with them at all yet. It's something that, I think is quite innovative, and I'm proud that we're doing it.
Yeah, I saw one of those videos last night with the Spanish and English reading. It works really nicely, and it's interesting. Someone's asking a question based on the argument that, do we still think it's bad practice to advertise the fact that something is a translation? And I think doing the marketing from the angle of, no, look at this translation, look how interesting the translation process is something that's quite new and interesting. And I do want to ask you how you get your translators involved. Okay, is there other stuff that are you getting translators to do events?
That's the idea down the line. So far we've had 2 US resident translators, so that's why we're, reaching out in the digital space. But definitely it's going to be a factor in our forward commissioning, I think, of translators, to have certainly a proportion of the list translated by UK-based practitioners, so that they can be involved in the promotion and events, and also because it's nice to be geographically close sometimes. But I mean, for editing as well, I've worked with some translators live, like sat down at a desk together and gone through the text, and that's very fulfilling. So yes, that we put translators' names on our book covers. That's very important to us, on the front, not the back. We have lots of space dedicated in the catalogue to translators, and also on our website they have equal billing with the authors. So it's very much about celebrating translators and their contribution to Akoya.
Aina, I know you get your translators involved.
So they are invited to the tour when possible. I mean, I do have a lot of translators who live abroad, actually, and that has been a problem. So there's two things here. One is when there is funding. For example, the Swedish have beautiful promotion funding, and you can put everything in, everybody and everything in there. And then when I don't have funding, sorry, if the translator lives abroad, well, actually, I can't now recall any occasion where they wanted to come, but there was a budget issue. I think I'm trying to think as I speak, sorry. If the translator wants to join, they do. And it's wonderful. The same for interviews in the media, etc., etc. I don't know about this thing of if we still think in translations don't sell and we need to hide it. I think this is absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know at what point it looks like in this country at some point in history it was a problem to have, translations which anyway, I won't be here rambling forever. But our translators are also on the cover, and I never try to hide this. And I think people love reading translation. And the youngest one do. I saw,
Yeah.
yeah, right?
Statistically,
It's
it's true.
increasing. It's the future. It's absolutely the future. Yeah.
Richard, how are you working with your translators
Um,
after the translation?
I mean, obviously, we, I completely agree with what the other two have said. We're a house that's based on translation, so they're a fundamental part of it. In terms of events and things like that, yeah, it's dependent on budget, but everything's dependent on budget, and where we can, we do. So yeah, yeah. I have nothing to add. Hopefully, translators who have worked with us feel that we are helping them as much, and they are a fundamental part of the story.
Yes. So Barbara's question that was based on that premise of historically we've been trying to hide translations was the question of translators' names on the cover. So two of you have said that you do. Richard, you also have translators' names on the cover.
Yes, oh my God, absolutely. We have the original. I mean, we have the title in the original on the back. It's like, we are really not hiding that it's a translation.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, full on. Yes, absolutely.
I like to add to this.
I sort of don't even, I can't even imagine. I don't know why it's a discussion any longer, to be completely honest. It's just like, of course, translators' names should be on the front.
I knew you were going to add a thing.
Yeah, no, just in terms of events and interviews, I mean, I think the translator is the person who knows the work the best. I mean, sometimes talking about the book with the translator, I'm just like, oh my God, can I steal this sentence for promotion? It's just amazing the insight a translator has. I think it's probably, the author and then the translator, the person who knows it the best. I mean, it's incredible. So it is very important to, I think, have translators, ask them if they want to talk about the book, because they will do it amazingly. Really.
I'm just looking through the Q&A questions. If anyone has any more questions to put in the Q&A, this is the perfect time to do it. We have 10 minutes left. There's a question about if you're publishing something from a language like Italian, which has dialect regionalisms, or something that has a very particular linguistic quality, do you have a sort of a house approach to dealing with dialect and vernacular and odd language? Richard, you look like you
well, no, because it's the eternal, because obviously in Italian it's an eternal debate, isn't it? I mean, it's the eternal debate, is what do you do with dialects in Italian? And, I work with two really, really, really wonderful Italian translators, and actually we take it on a case by case and we talk about it before we begin. And yeah, no. So do I have a house policy? My house policy would be not to over egg it, because I think what you can't do is go, oh, here is a thing that is deeply significant in one language, but actually the transference of that is not going to resonate. So I think one has to bear that in mind. And I think that's a discussion for me editorially to have with translators in any given circumstance. I mean, we've got an amazing Spanish thing coming up end of next year, which is set in Galicia, and where the main character is inhabited by a Cuban priest from the 19th century. Yes, this is true. So the female protagonist is sort of taken over by, so the language obviously in Spanish is extraordinary, because you've got American Spanish hitting kind of Galician Spanish, and it's like, what? Anyway, so that's a really wonderful debate to come with the translator when we start the process. As you can see, I get quite excited about the dialect thing.
Good. Kate, any experiences, good or bad, with
I have
dialect?
to say, I haven't had to take that decision yet. Having published Paolo Cognetti
Mm.
and then Antonella Lattanzi and Ada D'Adamo, both of whom are publishing next year, writing, well, Lattanzi is originally from Bari, but the book's set in Rome. But neither of them has this particular question to answer. And so, you know, it's more about finding their particular voice on the page, but it doesn't, we haven't had to solve that one, either of those two
Yes,
publications.
although that Ada D'Adamo book does contain a sentence that I used to set my students as untranslatable, so I'm so intrigued to know.
Oh, I look forward to hearing what that is later. Well, Alex Valente's done a great job.
He always does. Aina, do you have any policy or
I don't know, I would
experiences?
just hear what the translator has to say. I mean, no, in terms of dialects, I think it depends on every project. I can't think of any. There's a book, well, actually, an Italian book, Abandonment, where there are some words from Eritrea, and I think left them as they were. I don't remember well, but we had that. Yeah, you know,
Yep,
we had that discussion, right? And that would happen with each project if there was something like this. Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you've got words from a third language included, and they have all kinds of cultural connotations.
Yeah, well, and we had that with a Catalan book where, so it was written in Catalan, but then of course in the Catalan edition there were words in Spanish because people speak both, and then in the English, right? So that was another discussion of how to translate that, to leave that, to how to convey that there were two languages being translated, etc., etc. So I think I don't have each book is different, and yeah.
What else do we have in the questions? For translators who are starting out and wanting to build a relationship with publishers, how do emerging translators get in touch with you? Aina, you said you like working with emerging translators.
Yeah.
How do you find them? Is that through pitching? What's the best way to kind of get your attention?
One was a pitch, and the other one was a recommendation by another translator from another translator. And yeah, that's the only two translators I have worked with. And now I have a Korean translator doing an kind of internship with Héloïse Press because of a Korean program I won't go into, but she would probably, if I commission a Korean book next time, hire her as a translator. And with both these two emerging translators I have worked with, it's been very, very good. And it's beautiful. It's nice too. It's like publishing new writers. For me, it's like the same kind of thing, you know, it's just, I don't know. I can't say why I like it. I just like, maybe it comes from my teaching, you know, in another life I was teaching, and I think everything that is young and new professionals and enthusiastic people. I mean, it's beautiful to work with them. So yeah, I need to be, of course, I wouldn't go with, just anyone, but I like it. They are absolutely considered the same. In the same way, if I received a pitch by a new translator, that pitch is considered exactly the same way that a very experienced translator. So yeah.
Kate, were you going to say something similar?
I've found recommendations by other translators the most effective thing. Almost a kind of sort of mentorship relationship, so that you have the trust of the person you know well already, and then you take it into that. And yes, when I've worked with them, I've loved editing with emerging translators. The kind of dialogue that you can get going in that situation is fascinating. And though I've never done it, I am really interested in the art of translation. And I think as editors, we learn an awful lot from the translators during that process.
And so there's just another additional question on that. What are you looking for in those new translators? Or are you kind of relying on the mentor translator in that instance to see the attributes?
I think you can tell from a good sample
It's the writing. It's the
whether
answer
it's
to
going
all
to
of
be well
these
executed.
questions.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. I mean, it often comes with a wonderful measure of enthusiasm, and willingness to embark on the process and time and all of those things. But yeah, it's the writing first and foremost.
Yes, I would agree. It's the writing. I think if you can get work in things like Words Without Borders and Asymptote and that kind of thing, I'm permanently reading those, and I have found emerging translators through there. When you read something that is like has nothing to do with what I want to do necessarily, what I want to publish, but you see a piece of writing that is really stunning, and you understand kind of the thought process that has gone through. So if you sort of see in the background I'm talking from languages that I can speak. So if you can see how they've overcome things that evidently are really hard in the Italian, and it's been done really beautifully, that's a really glorious thing. I mean, that's how I found emerging translations that I work with.
Perfect. Can you very quickly tell us, Lucy Rand asks something that's I always wonder as well. When you use freelance editors and copy editors, do you choose bilingual editors in those instances if you can, or does it not matter? Or do you want some people would prefer not to have access to the original text at that stage? We have 2 minutes.
Yes, we do. We hire our freelance copy editors based on their knowledge of the origin language, as far as is possible. We haven't failed in that yet.
As far as is possible, Greek tricky.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Greek copy editors out there, get in touch.
Greek copy editors out there, yell. Yes, as far as is possible.
I started thinking that, and then I changed my mind. So at the beginning of the press, I really looked for bilingual editors, and then I had a very good experience. One of the translators told me, please, can I have that editor that is just an editor, it doesn't speak the original, doesn't know the original language. And I said, yes, of course. And it went marvelous. And the translator explained to me why she liked working with that editor. And those were like new, things I learned about editors, editing translations. So yeah, now I'm kind of less fussy about that and open to more options. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I think that is all we have time for. So I would like to say thank you very much. Thank you to everyone for joining us and for your questions. Particularly thank you to the panelists for all of your insights. It's been fascinating chat. And thank you to the National Centre for Writing, Arts Council England and the Italian Cultural Institute once again for hosting us. If you are in the Italian translation workshops, we will see you in the next session. If you're not, thank you for joining us and have a lovely afternoon. Bye-bye.